Not all weapons are made of steel. Darkness fears what shines in silence. The strongest shield hides in plain sight. Ancient wisdom whispers through tiny crystals. What protects life also guards the soul. Invisible battles demand invisible weapons. Purity has always carried hidden strength. Sometimes salvation hides in your kitchen. Energy bends before sacred geometry. Salt, currency protector, eternal witness of time. Across cultures, one truth remains unchanged. Evil cannot cross a salted line. The humble grain carries divine weight. What preserves flesh preserves the spirit. Crystals absorb more than the eye sees. Matter is only half the story. Salt remembers, salt protects, salt heals. From Egypt's tombs to Roman temples, science explains what mystics always knew. Power doesn't always come from fire. This isn't superstition, it's survival. What if the greatest shield was salt? Stay with me. At the very end, we'll build a guided 60-second salt shield you can use tonight. If this resonates, tap like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next ritual. And share this video with the person who needs it most. The best part is just ahead. Chapter 1. The Forgotten Weapon of Humanity. Since the dawn of civilization, humans felt stalked by forces they could not see, currents that firelight could not scatter, omens that clung to walls and skin. Across deserts and coasts they searched for a boundary that held a quiet law stronger than fear, until a humble white crystal answered back from the hearth with a steady, incorruptible shine. Salt stood beside the flame like a sentry, preserving meat and somehow preserving calm. Mothers pinched it into pots, while elders traced it along thresholds, one gesture feeding bodies and steadying spirits, utility turning into ritual before language caught up, the daily act acquiring weight, intention, and the memory of a people learning to draw a line against the unseen. From Egypt's floodplains to Hebrew altars to Roman forums, cultures named salt pure, constant, incorruptible. It flavored bread and sealed promises, crossed caravans on camelback, and rode ships through storm corridors, its presence as practical as it was prophetic. A small mineral teaching that order could be carried by hand, scattered on stone, and trusted like a law older than kings. People noticed what time could not undo. Flesh changes, but the crystal endures. Rain dissolves it and sun reforms it with pattern intact, a geometry of edges and planes that seems to remember itself, reflecting light like a tiny mirror of the cosmos. A patient lattice, suggesting why purity became its symbol and protection, its quiet vocation across generations. Value confirmed belief. In markets, a handful could buy grain or shelter, but it also purchased trust, because salt measured reliability better than fragile coins. Legions marched with it, caravans ensured routes by it, and entire towns rose where veins met need. Proving that what endures in storms also endures in deals, the mineral weighing commerce with the gravity of custom. Language kept the receipt. Salary from salarium, the Roman practice of compensating soldiers with salt or its allowance. Pay that tasted like duty and distance, rations and road dust. An etymology that refuses to fade reminds us that worth was once counted in something that does not rust. A substance that could season bread and stiffen, resolve with the same pinch. Yet the meaning outgrew ledgers. Crossing a bridge from matter to vow, kitchens breathed on one side, temples and covenants on the other, and salt connected them without strain. A household staple elevated into sign and seal, the mineral saying quietly what ceremonies proclaim loudly. That purity binds, that incorruptibility promises, and that some protections begin at the table. At doorways, a thin white line drew borders gentler than walls. Feet could cross, but trouble hesitated and rooms exhaled easier while guests smiled at the small courtesy, hospitality doubling as protection. The threshold became a contract written in grains, telling whatever prowled at night that this space had been noticed, named, and set apart by steady human hands. Children learned the etiquette before the chemistry. Share clean, keep some near the fire, and if you spill, cast a pinch behind your left shoulder. Rules that sound like superstition are really little architectures of memory, rituals compact enough for a child's palm, carrying centuries of trial and error, grief and relief, into habits that make a house breathe lighter. The hand that seasons is the same hand that consecrates. A pinch over food, a pinch over earth, and the ordinary turns ceremonial without trumpets, as though taste were a rehearsal for trust. In that doubling of purpose, salt becomes more than seasoning. It becomes a verb, to steady, to seal, to signal, making appetite and awe share the same small gesture. Trade routes stitched continents with pale threads, mountains offered veins, seas offered crystals, and cities bloomed where supply met hunger and faith. Bathhouses, granaries, and forums tasted alike, proof that civilization keeps time by what endures. And the mineral that resists decay taught people to resist despair, each grain a vote for order when storms pressed close. Thus the humble crystal earned a second name, not condiment but covenant, not seasoning but sentinel, a quiet companion to human courage, standing where fear would like to spread, bridging the visible and the veiled. And the more we used it, the more it used us, training our hands to draw a line and our spirits to recognize when a line must be drawn. Chapter 2. Sacred Salt in Ancient Traditions. Across the world's first cities, salt stepped from kitchen to altar. Priests, merchants, and mothers held the same white grains for different vows. What preserved meat seemed also to preserve meaning and memory. Rituals formed where utility met reverence and fear learned its limits. This chapter follows those rites where salt became a sacred border. In ancient Egypt, embalmers worked by lamp inside rooms of silence. Natron and salt drew water from flesh, arresting decay before it spoke. They believed the body's order guided the soul's long journey. If form endured, essence remembered its name through the dark. Salt stood as steward, patient as stone and careful as prayer. Beneath linen wrappings, crystals nested like a second skin. They fixed the shape the way stars fix a map for travelers. Not magic shouted, but structure obeyed. Dryness, balance, stillness. The white dust became a contract against the ruin of time. Between tomb and sky, salt held the line without violence. In Hebrew practice, offerings met the altar with a pinch of salt. Purity was not just clean fire, it was incorruptible measure. Grain, animal, and promise arrived braided by that mineral law. Salt named an eternal covenant because it does not rot. What endures in matter was asked to endure in loyalty. Covenant of salt meant a pact that survives weather and appetite. Because crystals refused to spoil, the vow refused to fade. A sprinkle sealed a word the way wax seals a letter. The gesture was small, but the meaning weighed like stone. Salt spoke softly, yet its grammar carried across generations. Romans salted thresholds before crossing into houses and ventures. They trusted omens, but they trusted customs more than omens. A thin white line chose fortune's side without boasting about it. Markets and doorways learned the same choreography of grains. First the boundary, then the bargain, then the feast. Before campaigns and contracts, soldiers and citizens shared salt. Not for taste alone, though taste mattered in the field. They believed a sprinkled floor steadied chance and tempered risk. Where dust turned to pattern, courage found a place to stand. The crystal taught Rome that order can be poured by hand. Folklore traveled lighter than tablets, quicker than law. Spill salt and toss some over your left shoulder. The motion is half joke, half shield against what prowls unseen. People kept doing it because rooms felt quieter afterward. Ritual survives when results feel larger than reasons. Doorways, windowsills, and corners learned to wear a pale seam. A handful in each place was cheaper than a guard, kinder than a lock. Guests stepped over it with smiles. Trouble hesitated without face. Children slept easier when the house announced its borders. The line said, "This space has been noticed and kept." Sailors rubbed salt into wood and stories before setting out. They knew storms answer physics, but fear answers symbols. A salted deck felt like a signed pact with the sea. Harbors listened and let the ship depart with steadier hearts. At landfall, the same grains greeted the threshold at home. Weddings, truces, and reconciliations borrowed the mineral's patience. Two people tasted a pinch to promise they'd not spoil. Tables turned into altars the moment crystals touched bread. What fed the body also fed the vow to endure. Salt stitched appetite to honor with one economical gesture. So across temples, kitchens, forums, decks, and bedsides, salt persisted, not as spectacle, but as quiet architecture beneath belief. The crystal was a worker. It dried, preserved, and bordered. Cultures called that work sacred because it kept shape against chaos. Next comes the question mystics asked: what vibration makes that possible? Chapter 3: Esoteric Knowledge and Hidden Vibrations. Salt in esoteric thought is not merely substance, but pattern, a disciplined lattice that remembers order when people forget. Hold a grain and you hold architecture that stacks symmetry into dust until chaos runs out of places to hide. It is matter-speaking grammar, a pocket blueprint that steadies rooms, hands, and moods without raising its voice. Look closely, and a crystal becomes a pocket cathedral. Every facet a wall, every seam a nave, where light is asked to kneel by structure rather than spectacle. Angles echo angles until balance feels inevitable. Form teaches energy how to behave, and the body unconsciously imitates, borrowing courage from geometry until posture and breath agree. Mystics say salt absorbs heaviness the way charcoal drinks smoke. A small dish listens in a tense room, pulling weight from air until silence sits deeper than before. When the vessel is full, you pour it out under running water or wind, reset the bowl, and the room remembers how to breathe. Hermetic language names 3 principles: salt, the fixed body; sulfur, the flame of desire; mercury, the mind that moves. Transformation begins where the vessel can hold. Structure first, then fire, then flight. The order matters because brilliance without boundary spills, while a kept edge lets even a small light travel far. Alchemy purifies in layers like painters layer glazes. First you dry, then you clarify, then you recombine what endures. What scatters was never meant to carry promise. A clean body births a clean flame. A clean flame births a clear gaze. And clarity births a path that does not wander. Science enters gently. Dissolved sodium and chloride carry charge, turning water into tiny roads where ions travel and noise finds lanes. Conductivity is order made measurable. Fields stabilize when pathways open, and even instruments nod toward the calm that mystics describe, the handshake between law and light. Shamans draw circles of salt before work that must be clean. The ring is not decoration, but a decision made visible, a pact between focus and the unseen. Inside, attention deepens and listening sharpens. Outside, what prowls loses purchase because gentleness becomes unscalable when the edge is exact. Thresholds love salt because thresholds love clarity. Where one space ends and another begins, grains speak plainly, step mindful, carry only what belongs. The moment you mark the seam marks you back. Noticing becomes armor, and the doorway learns to choose its guests without a guard. Legends say dark things cannot cross a salted line, call them moods, malice, or hungry ghosts, and the rule travels well because order announced is intrusion refused. A seam 1 grain wide proves strength can be gentle and still decisive. Boundaries work best when visible, simple, and kept. Esoteric texts call crystals little temples, precise and obedient. You carry sanctuary when you carry structure that will not lie. Hold the temple and your pulse takes cues. Breath meets lattice and the spine votes for upright truth again as corners soften and hard words cancel themselves. Consider resonance. A choir tunes, sand arranges into patterns, a glass hums when pitch is honest, structure invites rhythm, and rhythm invites coherence. Salt's lattice is a metronome small enough for kitchens. Set it down and stray beats find home, while attention brightens and the heart unclenches. Here the meeting point appears. Mystic story, scientific hint, human need, none cancels the others when the crystal is honest. Salt fixes shape, so intention survives noise. Use it as symbol, tool, and teacher, 3 names for one labor that turns panic into patience. Next comes practice, step by step. Chapter 4, Practical Rituals and Daily Protection. 1. Before anything, prepare the field. Tidy the room, soften harsh lights, open a window, and stand barefoot to ground your body. Choose salt with intention. Sea, sucks, flow. Rock, south structure. Himalayan, fach, gentleness, and store it in glass or ceramic. Write a short, steady intention phrase. Protect, purify, steady, clarify. One verb is enough when meant. Exhale through the mouth, inhale through the nose, letting the belly loosen and receive calm. Warm the salt between your palms for 3 breaths. Greet the tool so it works with you, not merely for you. Do salt bath, warm water, plus 1 cup, 1 to 2 cup if sensitive, stirring clockwise to invite clarity. Enter naming what leaves, fatigue, noise, tension, and let it unstick from skin and thought. Soak 10-20 minutes with low, even breathing, while the body remembers a quieter rhythm. Open the drain, visualizing the load departing. Rinse briefly to close the rite cleanly. Pat dry with a fresh towel and drink water with a pinch of salt to seal the circuit gently. 3. No tub. Use a shower salt scrub, fine salt, plus a little oil or honey to make a soft paste. Apply from shoulders and limbs outward, avoiding eyes and irritated areas to keep the skin safe. Rinse, saying, "Only what serves may stay," and notice the relief as heaviness thins. If sensitive, switch to a saline spray over the aura instead of direct exfoliation. Finish with 30 seconds of cool water to close, tone, and anchor the freshness you created. 4. Home perimeter. Cast a thin seam of salt across door thresholds and windowsills. Set small bowls of salt in the 4 corners of the main room to absorb static moods. Every 7 to 10 days, gather seams and bowls with thanks. Tools work better when honored. Dispose outside the home or in running water, never into plant pots or kitchen sinks. Reset fresh salt and affirm, "This house is seen, sealed, and kind," letting the room agree. 5. Bedside salted water overnight. 3 sound, 4 glass of water, and 1 tablespoon salt where tension gathers. If crystals climb or bubbles cluster by morning, the room handed you its heaviness. Carry it without touching to a drain. Pour with gratitude and rinse the glass 3 times. Repeat up to 3 nights if the field still feels dense or restless. Replace only when the glass wakes calm, a sign the space has learned to breathe again. 6. Portable amulet. Small cloth pouch with 2 teaspoons sea salt, rosemary and bay, tiny black tourmaline optional. Charge it with 3 slow exhales and 1 clear word of purpose, then a moment of stillness. Carry in pocket bag or place under the pillow on difficult nights to buffer noise. Empty and renew weekly outdoors. Do not carry last week's story inside the new week. If someone else handles it, cleanse and reconsecrate immediately. 1 keeper, 1 promise. Repeat up to 3 nights if the field still feels dense or restless. Replace only when the glass wakes calm, a sign the space has learned to breathe again. 7. For deep work, draw a salt circle big enough to sit within comfortably. Enter clockwise and declare, "Only benevolence and truth may cross." Then begin. Notice attention deepen as stray thoughts stall politely at the edge. When finished, close the ring. Thank it, sweep salt toward the center and remove it outside. Never leave the circle unattended. Closed rites return rooms lighter than they were found. 8. Sleep protection. A small dish of salt under the bed center or 4 mini piles at the legs. If nightmares visit, add a glass of salted water and a pinch inside the pillowcase corner. Before lights out, rub 1 grain and say, "I keep what is mine. I return what is not." Change weekly and discard far from the doorway to keep thresholds clean. Air the room each morning so new breath replaces old stories without residue. Dine. At work or traveling, carry a thumb-size vial of salt, an anchor for unstable hours. On a desk, set a tiny dish behind a plant. Empty it outdoors and reset weekly. In a car, run a thin line along the floor mat edge. Vacuum and refresh monthly. In a hotel, drop 4 grains in the corners, clap once per wall, breathe out into running water. Keep a spare pouch in luggage. Travelers need portable borders more than most. 10. To transmute, manifest, write 1 present tense sentence that is ethical, simple and concrete. Fold it toward you, bury it in salt inside a bowl, and cover with cloth in a quiet place. Each week, uncover, read softly, refine if it sharpens, then recover and let it mature. After 1 lunar cycle, burn or tear the note and release the salt outside. Seal the rite with 1 practical step that rhymes with your intention in the real world. 11. Renew whenever salt clumps, darkens or feels heavy. Trust touch as much as sight. Never reuse ritual salt for food or plants. It's served differently and deserves a dignified farewell. Discard in running water or far from entries. Wash bowls with lemon and sunlight if possible. If clearing is stubborn, add sound, bell, palms or hum to loosen sticky patterns. Keep brief notes. Patterns of times and places will reveal how often you need tending. 12. Care and safety. Keep salt away from pets, polished metals, fragile stone and damp wood. If your skin is sensitive, use foot soaks or aura brushing instead of full scrubs. Remember, ritual amplifies intention, not fear. Better gentle and consistent than grand and rare. Thank aloud at the end. Gratitude dissolves residues your eyes can't track. Salt is a teacher. It draws a boundary, remembers order, and then lets everything go. Chapter 5. Salt as Alchemy, Transmutation and Manifestation. Transmutation begins when salt stops being a barrier and becomes a laboratory. It takes what is dense and makes it subtle, what is reactive and makes it breathable. It doesn't erase emotion. It changes its specific weight until it floats and can move without cutting. In old terms, it turns lead into clarity, fear into focus, fatigue into available rest. Its secret is simple, stable structure, plus sustained intention, change of state. Where form holds, energy learns a higher step. Think of salt as a low-entropy anchor, clean order that invites everything else to arrange itself. When you place intention, the crystal lattice offers lanes so noise can become rhythm. It doesn't push, it absorbs the excess, reframes the confusion, and returns what's useful, aligned. That's why it cleanses first and lifts after. It's not a shortcut, it's a sequence. And a quiet mind gives transmutation a place to happen. Emotionally, salt practices slow alchemy. Grief stops being a swamp and becomes a river. You name what hurts, rest it on the grains, and breathe without judgment 3 times. Weight leaves on the exhale, memory loses its edge, and the scene gains distance. In the end, you don't forget, you understand, and understanding takes the knot's place. Where there was storm, a map remains. Mentally, it turns noise into criterion, from 1,000 thoughts to one that suffices. A bowl of salt beside the notebook fixes priorities and dims false urgencies. What doesn't belong falls away like filings. What remains is the thread that leads to the right act. The mind doesn't harden. It becomes proportional to what's in front of it. Thinking less but better is everyday gold. In space, The stagnant room becomes a field that breathes and resonates. Fine lines along baseboards and frames retrain the air's flow. Heavy objects sound different. They stop absorbing mood and return it clean. Corners cease storing old stories and turn into corners of light. The home becomes co-author of your rest. Lunar manifestation ritual. Write one present tense sentence, ethical, concrete, simple. Fold it toward you and bury it in salt for a lunar cycle. Cover with cloth and silence. Each week, open it, read softly, refine if it sharpens, then cover again. Salt purifies desire of anxiety and haste, leaving intention bare and firm. Close by, thanking. Release the salt outdoors and take a practical step that rhymes with your line. Ethics is the crucible. What you ask for must be shareable with the world without losing dignity. Salt amplifies intention. If the intention is crooked, it multiplies friction. Before you begin, ask, who does this serve besides me? If the answer is broad and kind, transmutation has a permit. If not, adjust the verb until your promise leaves no one smaller. Salt is dual, medicine for seekers of light, an obstacle for what feeds on shadow. It doesn't attack the dark, it removes the food and makes it irrelevant. Thus, it's feared by forms that thrive in density and the unspoken. Here, strength is absence of cracks, not muscle. Operative purity. Those who work in clarity find salt working with them. Triad of fire, breath and salt. Warm, align, then fix. A small candle, 3 deep inhalations, and a pinch over the paper you intend to act upon. Heat mobilizes, air organizes, and salt preserves the newborn form. You snuff the candle, place the paper in the bowl, and release the anxiety of when. Action is born less from impulse and more from precision. With others, transmutation becomes a table. Bread, water, and a bowl at the center. Each person names, in a brief word, what they offer and what they ask, and touches the salt. Boundaries, rhythms, and rests are agreed. The group breathes like a body, not a crowd. Misunderstandings quiet down because they finally have a place to rest, end with running water and small laughter. The weld for what was promised. Signals it worked, cleaner sleep, shorter decisions, a body with less noise. The house smells fresh without perfumes. The calendar shows spaces that didn't exist before. Desire loses anxiety and gains direction. No gains softness without losing force. Note dates, moon, phrases, and changes. You'll see patterns you can't in a single day. Constancy turns the exceptional into usable habit. Final integration. What's transmuted must land in habits, not only in high vibration. Organize a drawer, send the message, turn off the excess, learn the right yes and the right no. Salt taught you to keep form. Now it's your turn to move it with elegance and purpose. When something densifies again, repeat without drama. Clean, elevate, seal, act. So purity stops being myth and becomes a mechanic of life. Salt is more than condiment, currency, shield, alchemy, covenant. A tiny grammar of order for tables and thresholds alike. Hold a grain, you hold a simple, reliable toolkit. From tombs to temples, kitchens to workshops, it endures. Science calls it conductor, spirit calls it purifier. One crystal, one quiet architecture of order. The secret isn't ritual choreography, it's intention. Purpose becomes current, the salt organizes into rhythm. Without intention, it seasons. With intention, it clarifies. Used with awareness, salt becomes a key. It unlocks clarity to see, peace to dwell, strength to act. A measured pinch draws kind, decisive boundaries. The humble grain is a silent guardian. It marks edges, absorbs weight, then rests. Small yet steadfast, it keeps the soul steady. The 60-second salt shield. In 1 minute will clean, elevate, seal, and act. Right now. Props, a pinch of salt, sea, rock, Himalayan, a small bowl, plate, a doorway, or the space where you stand. Posture, standing, soft knees, shoulders relaxed. Intention phrase, pick one. Protected, clear, and calm. Only what serves may enter. Stand tall, exhale once. Inhale through the nose, whisper your intention, protected, clear and calm. Action, 1 slow breath, right hand over heart, left at belly. With a pinch of salt, trace a short line at your feet or the threshold, your boundary. Action, sprinkle a thin arc, 6-12 inches, in front of your toes or across a doorway. Drop 3 grains into the bowl. Name what leaves, fear, static, tension. Action, let 3 grains fall, slight nod, keep face relaxed. On 3 calm breaths, charge the shield. Count with breath. In, out, in, out, in, out. Action, on each exhale, gesture palms down over the line and the bowl. Affirm, only what serves may cross. Action, right palm faces outward toward the room sharp doorway, left hand rests on heart. Step forward through the line. The shield holds for this cycle. Dispose, use salt outside later. Action, 1 step through, shoulders drop, small smile, fade. If your energy shifted, subscribe and drop a like to seal the learning. Activate the bell and share. Let this circle of protection grow from hand to hand.